Internet imperatives for a Caribbean single ICT space. That is the theme of ICT Week here in the Bahamas. It is day 2 of the 16th Caribbean Ministerial Strategic ICT Seminar. Question: what is the role of Caribbean governments in the implementation of a single ICT space?
So firstly, the roadmap is one of the most ingenious things I would say is occurring in terms of digital development. It goes beyond what has been established as a single telecom space in Europe. Our roadmap really seeks to facilitate the Caribbean experience as Caribbean citizens circulating within the territories, exchanging services and goods. So one of the important things to understand is that the internet has and will continue to be a series of disparate components or a series of moving parts. And in this scenario, contrary to any other issue area, the governments really need to embrace the idea of collaboration from a very open setting. And that collaboration and that open setting is something we like to refer to as the multi-stakeholder process. Because compared to economic policy, compared to trade policy, those things seem to be very vertical. The internet is a myriad of directions. So where knowledge is not necessarily within government or within one actor. For instance, LACNIC deals with internet numbers and the distribution. The names part of the internet is through ICANN. The content part is through content developers. So it's a really disparate landscape. And it's crucial that in order to be effective in what we're doing, in order to be effective in realizing the goals of the single ICT space, that we work on this multi-stakeholder engagement and approach from the design, and not necessarily when we are looking at implementing an activity that had been fully planned without the understanding of how the other actors and the other components actually function.
So, in essence, what you're saying is that that multi-stakeholder approach needs to start now.
Yes.
Yeah?
And it has, I believe it has to a certain extent, because the single ICT space has been a decision that has been made since 2014. And I know from our own experience that LACNIC has been invited to participate in those deliberations. So we as technical community are meeting with governments, are meeting with other stakeholders to talk about those sort of aims, and more from the conceptual phase as opposed to the implementation phase. So that much is happening, and it's really for us to embrace it fully and to even further it, because the idea is that, as I mentioned in my presentation, we're not talking about buy-in, we're talking about co-developing and co-implementing. And I think that will really make the change in terms of what the Caribbean will do with ICT.
This is a very important project for economic and social development in the Caribbean, and governments play a pivotal role in making input to the policies that govern technologies like the internet. From an ICANN perspective, the role of governments is to be present, to be familiar with the issues being discussed, make input into the policies, so that when these global policies are developed for the internet, they impact the Caribbean and the Caribbean ICT space in a very positive way and consider the needs and the concerns of the Caribbean peoples and businesses.
Would you also say that we need to have a multi-stakeholder approach?
Well, I'm very happy that you use that particular word, multi-stakeholder, because this is exactly how ICANN operates, in a bottoms-up, multi-stakeholder approach where all of the entities that could be affected by the policies, businesses, end users, universities, students, the technical people, and governments also participate in policy development. So the ICANN multi-stakeholder model considers all views, all concerns of all stakeholders, and results in policy in the end that has more legitimacy because it got input from all of the people who could be impacted by these internet policies.
We know what we need to do, but what would you say if you had to outline some of the challenges as quickly as you can? What is a major hindrance for us in the region at this point in time?
The biggest hindrance that I've been seeing based on the work that I've been doing is participation, because we are strapped in terms of resources, and I'm not only referring to financial resources, I'm talking about human resources. Some of our governments just don't have enough people to follow everything that they should be following at the global level. And so I think to overcome that challenge, one of the things that can be done is to get more persons involved. In a government ministry, don't leave it to the minister and the PS. Bring in additional technocrats so you can have persons focused on these important areas, because we don't have individuals assigned to some of these tasks, and then the input falls through. There's no input from a government or from a region. So we need to participate, be familiar with the issues, and then ensure that the policies that are developed reflect what we need to develop our businesses in the Caribbean.
Rodney Taylor, chair of ISOC Barbados chapter, gives his 2 cents on the role of government in this single ICT space.
The governments in the Caribbean, through the establishment of CARICOM, have demonstrated their commitment to a single space, and therefore it makes sense that they would support a single ICT space. They need to do this by enabling legislation, laws that allow companies that are operating in one country to move freely and offer services to the next country within the group of CARICOM countries. They need to ensure that the regulations are harmonized, so that, again, the same regulations that apply in Barbados apply in Jamaica, etc., so that there's ease of operation, ease of movement of goods and services related to technology from one country to the next.
And it sounds so much like, the CSME. Is this technically an extension? And I know we do have some issues with CSME. We're trying very hard to make it work. But will it help in any way the ease of doing business?
Yes, I think technology will enable it. And in fact, because we are separated by water, the seamless integration of ICT services will help to foster that, because it will allow people to move and work. And that's what the CSME is about: people moving, people working, people connecting with other people, and not feeling, that once they've left one country within the region that they're now in a different place with different rules and regulations. So the harmonization of that, of the technology is important, and I think generally the development, the advancements in the technology such as cloud computing and the Internet of Things will definitely support and enable overall the CARICOM single market and economy.
What about economic growth, regional development, national development and regional development? Do you think a single space will enhance that?
Yes, I think a single space will enhance economic development in the region, because it provides greater incentives for investment in the region in information technology. So all of a sudden now, instead of small markets, we have a large market, which is the Caribbean. And so it is more attractive for investment. And because there are simplified regulations and legislation, now then it's easy for a company offering services to move from one to the next and see it really as one big marketplace.
What about disaster response and disaster preparedness? How does that now fit into this ICT space? Cleveland Thomas, ITU Caribbean representative, takes a look at the lessons from the 2017 Caribbean hurricane season.
We within the region, when we talk about climate change and so forth, much of the region really depend on climate-dependent industries, the tourism. And if there is anything that happens as far as climate change is concerned, it can affect many of us. We have reported that about 29% of the population of small island development state live on land that is less than 5 meters above sea level. So that means that we are really threatened by rising waters of the sea, etc. And climate, as it were, really can be stressful to the industry, to people, to lives, because of flooding, the greenhouse impact, etc. And mostly the vulnerables are challenged.
Day 2 of the ministerial seminar continued with Stefano Nicoletti, Policy Director, Technology Policy Group, GSMA, and Mariah Shermack, Senior Director of Regulatory Affairs, OneWeb. Mariah's focus, Technology for Communication Recovery, LEOs and MEOs. Secretary General of the CTU, Bernadette Lewis, gave her thoughts on fostering ICT-enabled Caribbean development, resilience, and recovery. Table discussion followed with Minister Melford Nicholas of Antigua Barbuda, Minister Byron of St. Kitts Nevis, Minister Lewis of Montserrat, and Minister Richardson of Anguilla. President of the CTU, the Honorable Melford Nicholas of Antigua Barbuda, gave the closing remarks.
We are embarking on a most important journey as of next year, starting with the theme of the New Year's program, which would be towards a 21st century government. I would want to take this opportunity to remind my good friend Bernadette that in 2015, in Trinidad, when the CTU celebrated its 25th anniversary, I was one of the persons who challenged the message about the ICT, single ICT space. I challenged it from the standpoint that I could not find a firm footprint, a firm grasp of what actionable events had to take place for us to be able to achieve this, what I then perceived to be a nebulous agenda. I indicated to her that I felt that governments had a role to play because governments are the largest consumer of services in their respective markets, and they are also the largest producer of services. And I felt that if government set out to become the example, the others would follow. As it turned out, over the last 3 years, I have done what I said that I was going to do, and have literally utilized all the effort and resources that were made available to me to put the government of Antigua and Barbuda on a definite path towards becoming a 21st century government in which the government had become digitally enabled. So it is no surprise to me that we are at the same place again, where our efforts are now going to be conjoined. And now that it is clear to me, especially with the presentation that was done by Mr. Curran yesterday, that we are now in a position to not only put some meat on the bone, as it were, but that, to my surprise, that the rest of the world is looking upon the experiment that we're about to embark upon, and to really make a reality our single ICT space to satisfy our own economic and social ends. So the task ahead is for us to pull our collective efforts together. If I may make an observation, in all of the fora that I have attended, both at the CTU level and the OECS level, and at Canto level, yes, I've been to them all, and I've not missed one. I have found that there is a marked gap in terms of the political participation. And if it is one thing, I promise you, Bernadette, I'm going to use my influence at the political level to insist upon greater participation of my other colleague ministers of telecommunications. It is absolutely important.
ICT Week in the Bahamas runs from November 27th to December 1st. The event is themed Internet Imperatives for the Caribbean Single ICT Space. It's hosted by the Government of the Bahamas and its Utilities Regulation and Competition Authority, IRCA, in collaboration with the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, CTU.